Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible. Hello and welcome to Single Parent Success Stories. Today's guest is Nina Cruz, a single mom of two, joining us from Sydney, Australia. Nina is a certified conscious parent coach, a social worker, a meditation teacher who's made it her mission to support parents through shifting archaic parental paradigms, many of which contribute to increased stress, anxiety, overwhelm, and feelings of disconnection for themselves, their partners, and their children. Her approach to coaching revolves around trauma-informed care that puts others at ease, providing a safe space for everyone to facilitate their individual healing and growth. Welcome, Nina. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me, Irina. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. Please share your story. How did you become a single parent?
Yeah, well, I don't think anybody goes to become one. It basically unfolded, and we got to a point in our relationship where we felt that it was better for us to be parenting separately. And so, it was such a big shift in my life. And, for my children, they were quite young. They were, 3 and 5. So everything was, my whole life was kind of exploded and changed. And, I really had to start to go inward and really, one of the things that I really learned was becoming present, because in the moment when everything changes and you're dealing with your own emotions and your children's, I found the only way to really navigate it all was to be in the moment, because that was the only moment I could show up in. So, it certainly wasn't my trajectory of my life that I thought I was going towards. But it happened and it unfolded. And I really tried to create something, some kind of magic in the chaos, in the challenge, and steer the ship for myself and for my children towards new waters, which was totally unknown. And I mean, we all live in the unknown. So, but as a single mom, and that has been a journey, and has also, really shown me the strength that I have inside, the talents and qualities that I probably didn't necessarily shine a light on and know about. But when you're single parenting, you have to call upon a lot of things. You don't have the backup there, and you're in the thick of it. You have to show up. I'm grateful that I have learned so much about myself, and also my children have seen the contrast of how my ex-parents and how I parent, and that contrast is really great for children to see how we do things differently. And this can happen in also a couple that are married, but obviously there is greater contrast when they've got two homes.
Yes, you're so right. And kudos to you for learning about yourself and discovering the gifts. I think oftentimes we don't look at our life unless there is some kind of event that happens that causes us to kind of see where is our life going and to reevaluate who we are. And you discovered so many things about yourself that you didn't know you had necessarily, because they were required, I guess, in the day-to-day living, and now you discover that they are. And I can relate, because I've discovered things about myself I didn't know I have other as well. So it's interesting how that unfolds and transpires. What kind of challenges did you face, and how long ago it was? I know you said that you were 3 and 5.
Yeah, it was nearly 6 years ago.
Oh, wow.
In January, it'll be 6 years. So, yeah, challenges. Look, I mean, we were living on the other side of the bridge, and my son was just starting school. So there was so much new stuff going on. So I decided to keep them for at least 6 months. We stayed in the same place, and then we moved north side for school. Um, the challenges were holding my children's emotions, and having to put mine on hold until I could go back and feel certain things, because I found that, and this happens as any parent, when our children are in big emotions, we need to become present and conscious so we can support them and hold space for them. Now, I don't advocate perfect parenting and we can get emotional, but I found through the process that it was so vital for me to really be present and hold their emotions, and then look at mine and feel mine later on when they were in bed. And because it was so new for my son in particular, was a little bit more aware. My daughter not so. She was a little younger, so my son felt probably torn between it a little bit, and that was certainly no wanting of us for that to happen. But often as children, it's just naturally they can feel torn, and also they can feel like challenged, because now do they go with, we have set rules of when they were going to mum and when they were going to dad, but they can also feel I'm trying to find the word, like challenged in a way for their love, because it's such a shift in their world, like a total shift of what they've known. And the beauty is that there are so many lessons in single parenting, not only for the parent but for the child, because in reality, nature, nothing stays the same. The trees are growing, the trees are shedding, and who says we're all meant to be living in this beautiful picket fence house with parents together for a lifetime? And who says you have to stay together, even if there's some things that are just not okay, and you've shifted and you've changed, and people change and people grow and evolve. And when that, when the vibration of people aren't matching each other, who says you have to stay for certain reasons? Obviously you can stay, follow your intuition, but it's really up to us how we create it and what we make of it, and how we look at it and perceive it.
Yes, so true. You bring a very good point that we often, when growing up, create a perfect picture in our head how life is supposed to be. And then when that perceived reality, when reality does not match the picture, we find ourselves depressed and in all sorts of despair. And I've had to redefine what normal looked like, because I thought normal is when you have a mother and a father and children and all living together. And I had to create a new normal when I became a single parent. So
Yeah, wow.
Totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Given what you know now, what kind of advice would you give yourself if you had an opportunity?
Yeah.
To that version of you when your kids were just 3 and 5, and when you just stepped onto that journey?
Yeah, like really, reminding myself, and even though it took time to learn it, but being so present in the moment, not going ahead too far to the future. Also, creating that magic out of the challenge, that the energy that we bring to the moment is creating our experience. We're creating our experience every single moment. And that doesn't mean that we don't have feelings we don't want to feel, or we don't, our children aren't dealing with their own challenges and we're not having to hold space. But how we show up for them and how I choose to show up for them is completely created. So I would probably give myself at the time, maybe the advice, or other people the advice that, just flow with the journey. Get out of your head, because the ego is going to tell you a lot of bullshit stories. Don't believe those stories. I mean, this is the work I do, where I support parents to see when is the ego running the show? When are the patterns running the show? When's the conditioning running the show? And when is your true self, your higher self, your divine self, your super conscious self? When, to choose that, to not stay in the circling and the hamster wheel of the ego. So when you go against, kind of society and conditioning and, of we should be, happily married, or we, these kind of prescriptions that are put on life. And, you should, by the time you're this age, you should have a partner, and, you shouldn't get divorced because that's a failure of a relationship. When in actual fact, relationships have cycles, just like we have our own cycles, and nature has cycles, and they evolve, and there is a evolution and growth. And, we need to also be aware of these egoic thoughts and agendas, because this is what keeps us in stuck in the same. So when you choose to become, a single parent, or decide that I've had enough in my relationship, I really don't, feel this is healthy, or it's toxic, or whatever's going on, your ego is going to get busy and noisy and tell you that you can't do that. You need to stay. You need to make happy family, and it's discerning what is your truth and what is the ego voice and the egoic agenda, so you can actually choose from your soul. And so yeah, I think that's really important, to follow as much as you can your soul's journey, because everything else is smoke screens and mirrors and trying to take you off that. And that's just how the ego is set up. It's nothing, it's not like we're going to ever not have an ego, and it's like, it's not, bad per se. You've just got to learn to understand your ego and then choose to create what you want to create. So, it's certainly a journey of self-understanding, and knowing thyself is the key to it.
How did you navigate your soul journey? How did you discern that from your ego?
Yeah. So I'd done a lot of work and study on understanding my ego and knowing when it plays out and the patterns I play out, and not living from them. When I see the pattern, I spot it, and then I choose what I want to create. So do you mean in terms of becoming a single parent? How did I know? Or
no, after you became a single parent, how did you navigate your journey to doing the important work that you do now?
Yeah, so I kind of stumbled upon this actually pre separation. I was starting like 6 months before or maybe actually a bit earlier than that, maybe a couple of years earlier, I found the work of conscious parenting. And then I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is why I'm struggling as a parent, just because it's all about me, not my child, and I'm making it all about my child. So then I started on a journey of studying and understanding myself better. Obviously, I was in the thick of parenting. That, when you're in the early years, you're so in the thick and trenches of parenting, trying to figure things out. No one tells you anything. except you're not going to get sleep. And so it was a process of getting to know myself and then understanding the patterns that I was playing out and seeing them, becoming aware. And awareness is always the first step, becoming aware of when they're showing up. Like, they're always going to be showing up because our ego is always trying to keep us safe. So it's always going to pop up. The pattern's going to pop up. We're never going to completely be free of the ego and what's happening, but we have a choice as to whether we give it our power and then we actually follow its guidance, which is just going to keep you in a circle, or we see it, we spot it, and then we rise above it and we go, I'm not playing there because I know where that goes. And you know, one of my patterns was I let things happen to me that I didn't make decisions. So, you know, indecision is a decision. So I found out. And I would let things happen to me. Partners would leave me. You know, I never spoke up. I couldn't speak up. And I, as a child, I went, you know, I was very quiet. My mum used to call me Mouse because I was like, I don't know. And it's not that I didn't want to know, I didn't know or want to express it, but for me, safety was holding it in and not speaking up, because if I spoke up, and then what are the chances I don't get heard, or I don't get what I want, or no one's listening? And that, for me, safety was shoving it all in. So when I became a parent, like overnight, everything changes. And then I couldn't play out the same patterns. And my children showed me very early on that if I want to connect with my son, and I come from a place of control, so, you know, often as parents, we're parenting out of ego and control and fear, which is all linked. Ego, control, fear, the paradigm. If I wanted to connect to my son, he showed me very early on, if I come from control, he will disconnect from me. So I had to learn a new way. I mean, if I want to be the parent I want to be and connect with my child, I couldn't go down the same route that my mum had done, or my parents did, which was control, fear, control. So I had to learn a new way, and the whole conscious parenting evolved. And then I was like, this has transformed how I parent. And wow, the amount of freedom I was having and how much I was letting go of stuff. And not only in my parenting life, just in life, I was like, this is like a no-brainer. I want to support parents. I was already doing coaching in a wellness kind of, more wellness coaching and health and fitness. And my background is social work. So I was already always working with people. I was kind of like, that was my obsession, helping people, supporting people. And also one of my questions that was always paramount was, you know, especially when I trained people as a personal trainer, it's like, why do they know what to do, but they're not doing it? And I was like, oh, what's going on? And this led me towards, you know, the conscious parenting and understanding the mind and understanding conscious creation and understanding how we can turn our focus and shift from victim, which is ego, fear, control, that's all victim consciousness, towards consciously creating what we want, and how our focus and the power, wherever the power is with our focus, is what's being created. So that was where I, you know, kind of was guided towards, and, you know, supporting parents also because I had been, well, what I felt I had been through so many experiences in a short amount of time, single parent, dealing with the big emotions my son was having when we separated, how I navigated that. So I really felt like I'd experienced so much. And if I could support parents, you know, on their journey to actually shortcut and maybe, you know, really see what's going on and not have to go through all the hoops and experience everything, you know, because with conscious parenting, you're taking your power back and becoming responsible, turning the mirror on yourself. And when we do that work, the dynamic with our child shifts. So you know, we don't have to play out the same pattern. So if I could support parents to know their pattern and then course correct and not play it out, then that would create more connection, you know, more empowerment for the parent and for the child.
Yes, you're so right. And I can relate to the fact earlier you mentioned how you were always quiet, and I was the same way. Neighbors often wondered and were asking my mom, "Are you raising a child? Because everything is so quiet all the time." And
most parents go, dream child, they're quiet, they're conforming.
yes, but like on the other side, I didn't want to create conflict, so I would stay quiet. I wouldn't express myself. But I mean, as children, it's one thing, but as adults, I think it's not a good practice to have, because then if we don't speak up, how is the other person going to know how to treat you, how to relate to you? Because if you stay quiet, the answer is always it means it's okay. Whatever is going on, it's okay. And we actually neglect ourselves by that, by staying quiet, by choosing peace over fighting. Yes, like sometimes two people come together from different backgrounds, bring different values. But if something goes against your beliefs, we gotta speak up. We gotta let the other person know how we are feeling, if something is bothering us or it's not the right way. Because if you don't communicate, it's not happening. And another point, I think, very good point, you mentioned that we were being raised with ego and control and fear. That's how I think our generation was brought up, because this is how it was back then. And now it forces us kind of, and I wanted to have more kind of conversation style, and maybe I'm too lenient with my kids, like from living in the control fear. And now I wanted to have better action. I'm speaking more to kids and kind of try to relay and explain to them. But like on the other hand, on one hand, like you don't want to make them your friends, but you do want to have a healthy relationship and boundaries and all that stuff. So how do you find that path, that kind of in the middle, that you're not too much on one end and you're not in the fear, but you're somewhere in the golden middle?
Well, firstly, what you said before about conflict, I just wanted to mention that conflict is actually the gateway to creating what you want, because conflict shows us our patterns. It gives us data about, oh, I do that, or I don't speak up, or whatever it is. So what I have learnt, because I was conflict avoidant, I was like, confrontation, no confrontation. And what I have learnt over the last few years and practiced, because my children fight a lot, they just got this dynamic where they just kind of like, you know, constantly.
Same here.
Yeah. I have learned to be in the conflict and not do anything and observe. Now, when we're observing not only ourselves, our own patterns, when we're observing them, we're actually in our power. We're watching them. We're not reenacting or reacting to them. So also with conflict, we get a lot of information. We learn about ourselves. So becoming okay with conflict and confrontation is so powerful, because it's actually like, if you look at an alchemist, they turn lead into gold. Now, in order to get to what you want to create, the lead is our dysfunctional personality. It's our patterning. It's all the shit that we do to protect ourselves, that the ego does, that the egoic agenda does, the egoic agendas do. So knowing that is, we see it through conflict. We see it when stuff shows up. So knowing that, then neutralizing that energy and being, yeah, I do this. Oh yeah, I noticed. Acknowledging it, neutralizing that energy is the gateway to create what you want. So that's really powerful. But in terms of finding, everybody talks about balance or flow, or, with parenting. So, boundaries are essential. I don't do punishments. I don't take things away. I don't do rewards. So you have to get highly creative. And natural consequences are always occurring in the moment. You know, child gets in the car, doesn't put their seatbelt on. Oh, we're not going anywhere if you don't put your seatbelt on. Okay. Oh, we're going to the party. You're going to miss the party, or you're going to be late to the party. So there's always a natural consequence that's occurring. You know, child doesn't do their homework. Go back to school. Well, that the school will sort it out. You don't have to be imposing, taking this away and doing this, because the reality with punishments is, and they take away, it's so vital to understand what punishments do, because I've seen it. I know, because I don't do punishments, so I know that, you know, my children are feeling certain things. So when you punish, instantly the child is thinking about the parent and how mean they are, how nasty they are, how unfair it is. They have completely missed the lesson of what they just did, of what happened. They are completely not feeling remorse, or not feeling the pressure or the anxiety, or whatever it is that's come up naturally, like nature comes up to the surface, to be felt, to be experienced, to be learnt from, to grow from. And here we come in with a punishment and we just completely mess it up. We completely mess up nature. So that's really important with punishments. But boundaries are a different thing. Boundaries are really holding, like they're kind of like holding, you know, kind of like a container around our child. They know how far they can go. They know the limit. It's like loving limits. They know how far. And you know, the beauty is, and I've had to learn this, the child that pushes the boundaries, that is so good. It can be completely challenging at times and annoying if you've got to get out the door and, you know, all this stuff. But if we redefine boundaries, and when they push, it's really great, because they're pushing, they're testing their limits, they're seeing and they're learning. And you know, I tell all parents and myself that childhood is a playground for us to be there to support them. And if they're not, you know, like pushing or trying out things while in our care, what happens when they're out of house and they're testing these things? It's going to be greater consequences out in the world. So boundaries are essential. They give children a feeling of safety, and also us, you know, as adults, they give them this safety net to fall upon. We hold them, we've got them. And that's key as a parent, that our child knows we've got them. We've got them when they mess up. We've got them when they do the wrong thing. We've got them. We can handle their big stuff. We can handle it. And we're there for it. We're their guide. We're their spiritual guide. So in terms of finding your balance between, you know, control. Now, I would say, if you're coming from control energy, it's very different to coming from empowered, assertive energy. So we have to know when we're coming from control. Are we saying, you know, reacting to something and trying to control it because we can't deal with the emotions it's bringing up inside of us? That we have to kind of understand and learn, like, when am I coming from control? What actions do I take? Because when we come from control, we're thinking, my child shouldn't have done this. Any shoulds are conditioning, because, you know, if you live beyond the world of duality, there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad, there's no should or shouldn't. There just is what is happening. Okay, my child did this. My child broke a window. Okay, you know what? Punish them for it, or how did it happen? Like, tell me about it. You know, was it an accident? Do we, you know, have accidents? Do we forget things? So it's really starting to see what is the truth of what really is going on, and what energy are you coming to your child with? What energy are you living from? Are you living from fear and anxiety, or are you living from an empowered energy that I'm creating my experiences? What I'm focusing on is creating my experiences. Absolutely everything we are creating. So then in terms of, boundaries kick in, consequences kick in, and then it's basically a dance. It's a dance between holding on and letting go all the time. Hold on, let go. Hold on, let go. It's no one way. It's not like you can go and read a book and go, okay, well, the book told me to do this when, for example, I'll give you one good example because it doesn't work for my children. If my children are angry and upset, they do not want me to acknowledge their feelings. They do not want me to say, I can see you're feeling really upset right now. No, they want space. That does their head in if I come in. And they actually want some space from me. I'm like, I'm here if you need me, step away. And I've had to learn that early on because they do not process their emotions that way. They feel them. It can be intense. If I come in and say my daughter, I say that, she's like, that makes my head even worse. Do not tell me anything. And so we've got, books telling us this and that, what you should and shouldn't be doing. Let it all go. You've got to attune to your child and figure out what kind of child do I have? How do they work? What works for them? What is the need they're trying to meet beneath the behavior? We become a detective and we let go of all the prescriptive ways of how we should or shouldn't be doing it. And we meet our child exactly where they're at. We're not trying to change them. We're not trying to make them into something they're not. We have all the evidence and data right before us. And then we learn to connect to ourselves first so we can connect to our child. If we come in and swoop in and go, after school, I watch myself, how was your day? What did you get up to? If they don't want to talk to me, it's because they've been at school for like 6-7 hours talking nonstop. They want a break. They don't want me coming in with all these questions and what happened here and who did you, and I watch myself sometimes do that. And I'm like, stop talking, Nina, stop talking. You've talked enough. And that's only for me. We're doing it for ourselves. We're not doing it for our child. We're doing it for ourselves to meet some need. And when you let go of meeting your needs through your child, the game also changes too. So there's many layers to look at and understand how you do things and why you do them that way. And then challenge yourself. Why am I doing it that way? Well, who told me I needed to do that way? And then deal with what is. What is going on with my child? If there's a behavior, what are they trying to meet? What need are they trying to meet? Understanding that our children are so powerful, like ourselves, and empowering them is really key. Because when we swoop in and try and fix, which I do not advocate fixing anything, we are basically saying you are not powerful, you cannot handle it. And that's not saying we don't support them, but there are certain experiences we have and our children have, and single, parenting, when you separate, we have to ride the wave. This is what the choice, this is what I've chosen. My child has chosen me as their parent. This is the wave we've got to ride right now. And it's coming from that space that is really transformative for both the parent and the child.
Thank you. You bring a wealth of knowledge, and I learn new things. Like,
yeah,
I like how you don't do punishment and let it like natural consequences. I think is so true because we mess around with nature by us coming in and how kids are just gonna be angry at us and not like why are you so mean, like punishing me?
Exactly. It just totally takes away the lesson and the learning and the feeling of that wasn't okay, I did that, or the natural feeling, because they simply just go straight to that that's unfair, that's and often if you come in to punish, which is control based, because actually like discipline is actually teaching, that is not teaching them anything. Punishment is actually, depending on how the parent feels in the moment, generally the punishment has no, is way bigger than what was done. because we project our own emotional state onto our child.
Yeah.
And when we stop projecting our stuff onto our child and allow them to be a child and let go of our expectations and agendas for our child, it's a completely different experience for us as parents and for our child. The child can be in their own spirit and their own soul and follow their own guidance as we can. So we're not dumping our stuff, which generational patterns, onto our child. And that's not to say they're going to not have an ego. They're going to have an ego. They're going to have an inner child, all created in childhood, all perfection. This is how we roll in this lifetime. But we're not adding extra on. They're going to have their own patterns. They're going to have, maybe I don't feel enough. Maybe I don't feel worthy. They're going to have their own flavor, but we don't have to add our stuff onto it, So that's really powerful.
Yes, so true. What do you think is your personal superpower?
Yeah, I think, since becoming a single parent, I've definitely found a way to shift from when I'm in my victim, when I'm like, poor me, oh God, this is so hard, to get into that creative space, to get into that magic, creating that magic out of mayhem. I've got so many experiences with my kids where everything's falling apart, and instantly I get like do this, and I do something different, and it shifts the whole way we move. Or I'll add creativity or playfulness into some moment. Like my daughter went through a phase where she wouldn't get dressed in the morning, and tried to leave her clothes out the night before so she'd get dressed. So I became her personal stylist, and we'd have fun getting dressed in the morning, or I put on some accent, or just adding those extra touches, that playfulness, that connection, that creativity. And those are some of my favorite moments, which were birthed out of challenge and out of chaos and mayhem and nothing going how I wanted it to go in the moment. Those moments were created because I let go of controlling it. And I must say, I learned early on that if I get involved and if I tried to yell, or if I tried to say, you shouldn't be doing that, we've got to get to school, get out the door now. If I added any of that, it would be an hour plus event. It would have dragged on. We would have a big upset, my ego raging, my daughter's ego or my son's ego raging, mess to clean up. And I learned early on, the more I could zip it and be in the moment and get back to presence, the more the magic was created. And also the less I had to clean up, the less I had to go and, say, I'm sorry I did this, and I didn't want to do this. I don't want to be the yelly parent. And yeah, so that was always powerful. That would come into my mind. And then I've had to teach that to my son, because he wants to tell my daughter, his sister, we've got to go now, you got to go. And I know they're empowered. Once she's being pushed, what do you want to do? When anybody's being pushed, what do you want to do? You want to go the other way. You want to resist it. Yeah. When you add resistance, this is a really big learning. Resistance from me, resistance from my child, more resistance. So when we can shift our focus and let go of the perceived control, because we actually have no control whatsoever. It's all this egoic thought that we can control our child, we control our life. None of it is real. It's an illusion. So when we can let go of this, and I was teaching my son, go to the car, wait for us. I said, leave it with me. I will get her out. I will be there very soon. The more you add, the more she's going to say, I'm not getting dressed, I'm not going to school. So it's been interesting. And, he's also learned. He's learned that, the more he lets out that resistance to his sister, the more he's going to get resistance from her and not get what he wants.
I love that. I think you're amazing that you're able to teach that to your young kids. how much better they're gonna get when they're older, how to deal with emotions and not let your ego take over, because you are so right. We can create our experience if we are being present in the here and the now, as opposed to trying to control everything. And I know in the mornings could be so difficult when you're trying to rush out the door because you have to go.
Exactly. And we stress and we're like, the reality is it's on us. It's not our children. Children are slow. They take time. If you don't get them up early enough, if you don't prepare them the night before, it's actually on us. It's not the child. We're blaming the child all the time that they're making us late. It's our responsibility. We're not organized. We're not on time. We're late.
Yes. So true. What kind of advice? I know you shared a lot, but what kind of advice can you give to single parents who are just stepping onto the single parenting journey? What was the most important thing, like, in your journey, would you say?
Yeah, look, I think it was the present. I can't repeat that enough. Being present, be in the moment, watch. Remember, you're in your power when you're watching it, your thoughts, when you're watching them, not when you're jumping on them. So if you're watching the thought, oh my God, I don't know what to do. How am I going to get the money to look after my children? I don't know. Now I'm not saying don't feel feelings, but don't jump on the thought and start worrying. Your children and yourself need you to be present. Your children need you to be with them in the moment, whatever is showing up. If they're losing it, if they're aggressive, if they're having a behavior, if they're sad, whatever it is, the more you can be present and watch your thought processes, watch your patterns and not react to them, you stay centered and grounded in your power. Also, I think early days, find a couple of people that you can just talk to without getting advice. You don't need advice. You know what you need. When we go and ask people for advice, we are getting their paradigms, their patterns, their opinions, their judgments. It's not truth. It's all ego. We need to follow our truth. If you've taken that leap or whether you have taken it or whether you're in the circumstance of becoming a single parent, you're separating, it is what it is right now. Learn and become, learn to read your own intuition, to follow your intuition. And, intuition requires us to go back to a state of innocence where we are beyond belief systems. We are beyond conditioning. It's like imagining you're a baby again. When you can drop back to imagining you're a baby again, and like as a baby, you think, or we think as a baby, or babies do, that they are everything. There is no separation between them and the mum, and that they're in the consciousness of not knowing that yet. They don't know separation yet. They think they're everything. They're the everything, one, that oneness consciousness. So when you can step back into that innocence, and then that's into your intuition, which is beyond belief systems and understanding. It's beyond like even, logic. It's beyond the mind. And take the next most obvious step, the next obvious step, and the next obvious step. What's showing up right in front of me? I'm not trying to figure it out. I'm not trying to fix it. I'm not trying to change it. What's my next obvious step? Okay, I need to do this, and follow that intuition. Yes, talk to people. Get people to listen to you, but be very clear with them that you need someone to talk to, but you just want to say how it is and what you're feeling. Be clear that you don't want advice or being told what to do, because this steers us off our truth. This steers us off our path. And when we are looking for someone to tell us what to do, we're fearful of taking our own power and being empowered and taking our own actions. And that's okay. We can feel fearful. We can feel all of that. But then just step back into your intuition, your taking the next obvious step. And apart from that, I would say, you know, self-care is really important. You know, when my kids would go with their dad, I couldn't see anybody. It was like I had to be in silence, because when my kids came back, I'm sure you know it well, and if you're a single parent, you will know it, there's a transition. 24, 48-hour transition. Particularly the mother will receive all of the stuff that has not been processed, all of the big emotions, generally, and not always, but typically, the mother will receive their emotions, because they'll come back from their other parent and just unleash whatever big behaviors, big meltdowns, big upsets. They'll be angry with you, they'll be sad, whatever. It's 24, 48 hours. My son used to do it, and you know, water is amazing for these big emotions. And he used to have a bath. He used to come back in the middle of the day and have a bath. And I'd be like, and then I realized it was because the water element, the water element, throw them in, you know, not throw them, but take them to the beach. Do something to process these big emotions. Water is great. If you can get them swimming, it's great. So when your children aren't with you, if you do have some space and time, don't go and fill it up. I know I can be really, my pattern is busy doing, and I can put just resting can be on the back burner, on the last part of the list. So try and put your self-care up the front. Have a massage, whatever makes you feel good and releases, you know, stress, and do that. And I advise, don't go and go out with friends. Don't go and call 100 people, call heaps of friends, because you'll take on their stuff. You'll take it on. You go out, you're chatting all the time. You need time to just be with yourself, just silence, or meditate, or whatever you do. Because when your children come back, it's game on. And you want to be at your peak, the best condition you can be in, ready to hold their emotions, because you've already held yourself. And that's the same analogy everybody gives, is, you know, give to yourself first. You can't give from an empty cup. So that is crucial for a single parent, more so than any other parent, because you do not have backup. You can't say, hang on a minute, I can't deal with this, darling, can you take, you know, you're doing it all. You've got it all. You got to deal with spiders. You got to deal with cooking. You got to deal with whatever. And especially if you have more than one child, you're like pulled. Like, one child wants me, the other one wants me, and you're like, where do I go? And self-care, self-compassion, and self-love, all wrapped in. And that means you got to learn to say no. If you're a pleaser, if you're a people pleaser, a yes person, it's now time to say no to people and yes to yourself.
Thank you. I think you touched on very great points. I think self-love and self-care, and you're the first one to talk about just being, and I understand that, because it's part of my practice, just being present, because oftentimes we spend time in the past or in the future worrying, or coulda, shoulda, woulda, how I should have behaved, and we miss out being in the present, because from the present we create a future, and we can create it literally every single day. We wake up, we can create a day, we can create our experience, and we can then live from that experience, as opposed to, we cannot go back and change the past, what happened, but we can create a past into the future. So thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story and your wisdom. I love talking to you. I think we can talk for hours.
Yeah.
If people would like to learn more about you, follow you, learn more about your work, where would they go?
Well, I've got a website, ninacruzconsciouscoaching.com, or Instagram, Nina Cruz Coach, Facebook, Nina Cruz Conscious Coaching. I have a few freebies on my website, a 12 Days of Presence program. So you get a little paragraph to read every day. Perfect gift for Christmas, 12 Days of Presents. The best gift you'll ever give. Our children don't want stuff. You might think they want all the toys. They don't. They want our presents. They want us to show up. Just like we want people to show up for us and be present to us, to be seen, to be heard, to know we matter. Otherwise, I am on another network called The Wild Network, mywildnetwork.com. And LinkedIn I am on, but I'm not so active on there. Apart from that, I think that covers all the main channels, right?
Yes, really.
Yeah. And I do also do a free 30-minute discovery call for new people if they want to hear, what I do, because I also do a lot of that creation work with parents. So they get really clear about what they're creating with their child. Like when your child comes back to you, okay, right, it's game on. Connection is the first thing. How do I want to show up? How do I want my child to experience my presence? And that's really powerful work. And I offer a 6-month program, coaching program, which is really, taps into parenting, but also conscious creation.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your wisdom, your experiences, and your lessons. I learned a great deal. Everything will include in all the links and episode notes. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you for having me.